Today on Christian World News, Christianity under the Muslim Crescent. A new report says Muslim nations are the harshest persecutors of Christians. We'll tell you who they are. And the explosive growth of the Chinese church. Why young adults in the country's biggest cities are flocking to Christianity. Plus, our visit to the church that's produced some of the most inspiring worship music of this generation. What's the secret behind Hillsong? The most dangerous countries for Christians are overwhelmingly Islamic. Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith. George Thomas is on assignment. Open Doors International, a ministry to the persecuted church, released its annual watch list of the world's worst offenders. And while communist North Korea is the worst, 8 of the top 10 have Islamic majorities. Here's Ephraim Graham.
For the 9th consecutive year, North Korea tops Open Doors International's list of the worst offenders when it comes to the persecution of Christians.
While they're exterminated, we cannot sit.
Carl Moeller is with Open Doors, whose list shows the most dangerous countries to practice Christianity are overwhelmingly Islamic ones. After North Korea is Iran, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, and Somalia.
Worldwide, the worst place on earth to be a Christian is primarily in the Muslim world.
The head of Open Doors says Christian persecution has increased significantly in places like Iraq, which has jumped to number 8 on the list, up from 17 last year.
Iraq has jumped specifically because of the intentional targeting of the Christian community there by extremists within the factions of Iraq. Al-Qaeda this year indicated on its websites that Christians were, quote, legitimate targets now for their mujahideen, or their holy warriors.
Just before Christmas, Muslim extremists waged attacks on Iraqi Christians, including a massacre at a Baghdad church.
We're actually labeling it a religious side, as extremists there want to exterminate all Christians from the country of Iraq.
Just as the list is released, the Obama administration is condemning the attacks. The State Department says it is deeply concerned by what appears to be a rising number of attacks on Christians in the Middle East and Africa. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Christians in Egypt are crying out for justice after the New Year's Day bombing of a Coptic church. Egyptian officials blame outside groups like Al-Qaeda, but Egypt's Christians say the government does nothing to protect them. Heather Sells has more.
Egyptian authorities are trying to determine if homegrown Islamic radicals bombed a Christian church on New Year's, killing 21 worshipers and wounding nearly 100. They're also investigating whether al-Qaeda-backed outsiders, possibly from Iraq, sneaked into Egypt to commit or coordinate the bombing. Paul Marshall is with the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute.
This one could well be an al-Qaeda attack. It seems to be better planned. It looks like a suicide attack. So there could really be an escalation.
Christian protesters took to the streets in 3 Egyptian cities. One cried out, "All these people murdered, what have they done?" They were just celebrating a new year, praying in a house of God. Much of the protesters' wrath was aimed at the police and government, who they say don't do enough to protect Egypt's Christian minority.
The U.S. State Department now speaks in Egypt of a climate of impunity. That is, if someone attacks Copts, nothing's going to happen to them. There's impunity. The attacks are increasing, and the Copts feel that they're simply not being protected. They're just out there being killed.
Egypt's president blamed outside terrorists and spoke of Muslim-Christian unity.
Terrorists are not going to succeed in threatening Egypt and threatening the unity of the Muslims and Christians living side by side in Egypt.
But Marshall says the attacks are increasing because Egypt's Muslim community is becoming more radicalized.
There's the influence. A lot of Egyptian workers go and work in Saudi Arabia. They get radicalized. The Saudis pump money into Egypt and Islamic educational institutions. So across the board, an increase in more radical forms of Islam and increased intolerance and increased tension.
Egypt's top Muslim cleric came together with the spiritual leader of the nation's Orthodox Coptic Christians to say all Egyptians of all religions need to stay united. The Pope weighed in as well, saying the attack in Egypt, just like those on Iraqi Christians, offends God and the whole of humanity. Heather Sells, CBN News.
The Pakistani governor killed by one of his own guards had been a strong defender of a Christian woman condemned to death for blasphemy. Salman Taseer had met with Asia Bibi, the Christian mother of four, convicted of insulting Islam's prophet Muhammad. The court sentenced her to death under Pakistan's harsh blasphemy laws. Taseer publicly called for Bibi to be pardoned and the blasphemy laws amended, a move that aroused the wrath of Muslim extremists. On December 31st, he sent a Twitter message saying, quote, "I was under huge pressure to cow down before rightist groups on blasphemy, refused, even if I'm the last man standing." An aide to Pakistani President Zardari called Taseer a courageous voice on the rights of women and religious minorities in Pakistan. Political tensions in the Ivory Coast are rising. The opposition candidate is calling for the sitting president to be removed from power by military special forces. The UN and many Western nations claim Alassane Ouattara is the rightfully elected president. But the incumbent, Laurent Gbagbo, refuses to step down. He says acts of election fraud were committed. Gbagbo is a Christian and Ouattara a Muslim. Some fear the country is on the brink of war. Gbagbo told CBN News that he has peace about the situation because he knows God is in control.
I pray God every day, and I tell him to give me the strength so that I can lead the people that he has entrusted into me. The rest he decides.
To find out more about the Ivory Coast political dispute, log on to Gary Lane's blog, The Global Lane, at cbnnews.com. Coming up, a new wave of churches is sweeping through China's biggest cities. How young professionals are the newest faces of China's church.
CWNews.org, your constant news source on the World Wide Web. Find daily updates on the global church. Watch the weekly broadcast.
3 former presidents come together to honor the life and ministry.
Also available in podcast. Read in-depth insights into our reporter blogs.
Taliban kidnapped at least 18 South Korean Christians.
Your online news source for complete coverage of the global church.
Have you ever wondered why some people seem to achieve success so readily? They're able to see opportunities all around themselves. Conquering challenges.
This is it.
And achieving success.
Thank you so much.
How is it others are able to overcome destructive behaviors and find true satisfaction in life? And what enables some people to have such faith in God?
Help heal our daughter.
That they see miraculous answers to their prayers. The answer to these questions and how to live a victorious life are found in the secret laws of God's kingdom.
In Pat Robertson's latest teaching, The Secret Kingdom Volume 3, you'll discover powerful keys to unlock the miraculous in your life.
As you follow the laws of the secret kingdom and make them a part of your life, the results will be nothing short of incredible.
If I could build this big, strong body, this armor around myself, then nobody could hurt me again. I felt like if my mother didn't love me, my biological father didn't love me, then how in the world could anybody else love me? God loves us, and he wants the best for us. I'm living proof of that. Just give him a chance.
It's been nearly 1 year since the earthquake that killed more than 250,000 people in Haiti and left nearly 1 million homeless. Now, evangelist Franklin Graham has been invited by the country's churches to remind people there is hope in God. On Sunday, January 9th, Graham will hold a Festival of Hope in Port-au-Prince's National Soccer Stadium. He'll be joined by musician Michael W. Smith and Haitian worship leaders. More than 500 Haitian churches are working together to bring their neighbors to the event. CBN News will broadcast the Festival of Hope live on our website at 1:30 p.m. on Sunday. You can see it at cbnnews.com. Well, decades ago, most Christians in China lived out in the country. But now that's changing as young professionals are bringing faith to the big cities like Beijing and Shanghai. My colleague George Thomas has that story from Beijing.
It's Wednesday, just after 7 p.m. In an apartment not too far from the city center, a group of men and women in their late 20s discuss how to thrive in their rapidly changing nation. All are members of China's new privileged class, highly educated, cosmopolitan, middle or even upper class of urban professionals. And they're all Christians.
We've never had it so good in China today. But there's more to life than just money and materialism.
Worship God, worship heaven.
Jia Litian works for one of Beijing's largest tour operators. Like young urban professionals in other parts of the world, he and his peers live in high-rise apartment buildings. They own a car, sometimes two. They are tech-savvy, they travel, they have money to spend. But the pressure to succeed and thrive is fierce.
The competition for jobs in the big cities is intense. Status is everything. How much you make, how big is your apartment, what kind of car you drive. This is what people focus on.
The government makes it possible for us to earn money and have a good life. But how do we handle all these pressures? The government doesn't have answers for this.
And it is in this rapidly changing society that religion, especially Christianity, finds itself filling a spiritual void.
I'm a different person today.
23-year-old Zhe Kun joins the growing rank of those in these cities who are embracing Christianity in record numbers.
The last couple of years have been difficult for me. I have struggled professionally and personally. But then someone introduced me to Jesus, and now I have a different outlook on my life.
This is music to the ears of Zhu's pastor.
God called me to start a church to reach these young people with the gospel.
Jin Tiangming leads Shuang, one of the largest unregistered, sometimes called underground churches in Beijing. A graduate of China's most prestigious university, Jin's church began 18 years ago with 10 people. Now, close to 1,000 attend his weekly service.
The majority of them have graduated from college and work in the city. We have lawyers, professors, doctors, business people.
He says similar gatherings are springing up in other big cities, attracting the white-collar working world.
They are looking for ways to handle the dramatic changes in China, and they're finding answers in Christianity.
Back at the apartment, Jia Litian helps run a Bible study for new converts in the city. He says this is the new face of Christianity in China. Such believers are part of what some are calling China's third church.
But
Peter, not his real name, has worked with China's underground churches for decades. CBN News agreed to conceal his identity to protect him.
They're called the Third Church because they're very different than what used to be the only two real kinds of churches in China, which were the registered church, registered with the government, and then the unregistered churches, usually called house churches, which thrived in the countryside in the 70s and 80s. But then after the 1989 demonstrations, these urban, educated, well-to-do Christians started forming urban churches.
And while Christianity continues to grow in China's countryside, it is here in the big cities like Beijing that experts say the church is growing the fastest.
Whereas the rural church was not able to have an impact on society as a whole, the third church in the cities is able to do that because they're comprised of leaders who can have an impact. Businessmen, government officials, professors, leaders in engineering, every aspect of life.
Pastor Jin's congregation is technically an illegal gathering. You see, he hasn't registered his church with the government, nor is it part of any of these state-sanctioned churches. But rather than hide from authorities, Jin and others who lead such congregations in the big cities want to work with the government officials. But let's be clear, the Chinese government maintains a tight grip on religion. Torture, arrests, imprisonment, and beatings of Christians are still practiced, yet the authorities in recent years have made positive overtures toward leaders of the house church, especially those in the urban areas.
The church in China is growing, and Christianity is becoming more and more a part of mainstream society. The authorities know this, and they're showing a willingness to work with us.
A gesture welcomed by these young believers as they use faith to navigate the opportunities and challenges of China today. George Thomas, CBN News, Beijing.
Up next, the church that's produced some of the most powerful worship music will go down under to show you the success behind Hillsong.
It's the one thing news viewers can agree on.
They want change.
Now, the world's leading Christian news organization brings you national, international news and analysis throughout the day. Mornings, the busy lunch hour, late afternoon, and evenings. It's news with a Christian perspective whenever you want it. Available on the web 24/7 at cbnnews.com.
You and I live in a visible world, yet there is at work all around us an invisible kingdom of unlimited goodness and power. In the Bible, Jesus Christ has given us fundamental kingdom principles that are as valid in our world today as the law of gravity. These principles can overcome every obstacle or circumstance we encounter and guarantee our success.
In The Secret Kingdom Volume 3, the final teaching in the inspiring DVD series, Pat Robertson reveals how the power of God's kingdom works and unlocks the secrets of fidelity, miracles, and dominion. Powerful principles that will change your life.
You can reach from a world of impossibilities into a realm of limitless possibility and power.
The Secret Kingdom Volume 3, available now.
I became a slave to it. It got really, really addictive for me. I said, God, you have to deliver me out of this. That woman of God laid her hands on me. My God instantly delivered. I didn't have any more feeling to smoke, to use crack cocaine. I didn't want any of that anymore. And if he could change me, he could change anyone.
Well, many Christians are familiar with Hillsong. The Australian megachurch is known worldwide for its hugely popular contemporary praise and worship music. Recently, our own Gary Lane went to Sydney to bring us this look at one of the world's most successful churches.
Contemporary Christian praise songs, Mighty to Save and Shout to the Lord, are known by Christians worldwide. Hillsong music is so popular, the songs are sung even in small churches in remote parts of the world. Hillsong has now released a total of 40 albums. Praise music that continues to influence people of all ages around the globe.
We were intentional about writing the kind of songs that affected our church and that glorified God. Honestly, it is a miracle. You couldn't make it happen. You couldn't market the kind of opportunity we've had every continent of the world with the praise and the worship, and even the mix of songwriters and gifted people that gather here. I mean, it's just a local church having church.
And it's the vision that God has given Senior Pastor Brian Houston that has helped propel Hillsong Church into an international phenomenon. Houston and his wife Bobby first started Hillsong Church in 1983. At that time, it was called Hills Christian Life Center, with only 45 members. And within 4 years, the church grew to 900 people. Services were held in a warehouse in those early days. The church moved to its current location in 1997. And God has blessed Hillsong Church through the years, expanding its various ministries and transforming lives.
23,000 people attend services here at Hillsong on any given weekend. The church has 3 campuses in Sydney, 14 extension services, and churches around the world in Kiev, Moscow, New York, London, Cape Town, and Paris. Why is the church, after 27 years, so successful?
sounds like a cliche, but it really is the grace of God. I mean, I think we have a church that is really intent on being relevant and reaching people, and I've always tried to be sure that we're preaching not just to people Sunday, but to their Monday, keeping it practical so it really relates to people's everyday lives.
And Hillsong is more than just music. The church has many other ministries in Australia and around the world. Among the Hillsong outreach, Hillsong Kids, Youth and Women's Ministries, and Hillsong City Care. Hillsong Church will celebrate its 25th conference year in 2011. 100 people attended the first one in 1986. More than 30,000 have attended since the inception. And young pastors, missionaries, and praise leaders are trained each year at the Hillsong Leadership College.
It really comes down to being a church that is effective and influential and reaches beyond itself. And I read today that vision, and you can almost see the outworking of those things that then were just a dream. So our vision has never gone on great, turns to the left or to the right. We've just been consistent about doing what the Lord put in our hearts.
Hillsong has faced a number of controversies and challenges in recent years, including media criticism for its relationship with several Christian organizations and some conservative politicians. Pastor Houston admits the church has had to overcome some difficult times, but he's not discouraged. He's optimistic about the future. He sees the recent election of Australia's first openly atheist prime minister as a rare spiritual opportunity.
Australia's an interesting place. It's a very secular country. I think it's listed in the United Nations not as a Christian country, but a secular country. And I find there's really a paradox, because there's a very strong antichrist spirit in Australia. I think aggressive atheism is on the rise, and a really anti-God spirit. And yet at the same time, my personal experience with people, every day I meet people who are spiritually hungry and so wanting to know more about God. There is a spiritual hunger, and if we can tap into that, I believe there's a great future for the church in Australia. To me, it's all about consistency in season and out of season, and it's amazing what God can do.
Gary Lane, CBN News, Sydney, Australia.
We created this website as a place where kids can learn the Bible in a whole new way.
Kids will love Superbook.tv. Their games, the ability to create your own personal Superbook characters. We even have a place for kids to listen to music on Superbook Radio.
Superbook is CBN's animated series that teaches the Bible through the eyes of two friends and their robot sidekick. We're going to tell stories all the way from creation to Christ's return.
The website also teaches kids life lessons. Parents can spend time online with their kids learning about the Bible.
Superbook and Superbook.tv are entirely gospel-centered, and by supporting it, you'll help bring God's Word to children all over the world.
We're reaching a new generation with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Together, we can give today's kids the truth of the Bible in a fun and exciting way that will change their lives.
Visit Superbook.tv today.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Christian World News, your window to the global church. For stories of revival,
Another revival.
persecution,
Funeral, relatives and fellow Christians mourn his.
The first country over the international date
I'm
line.
George Thomas in Baghdad, and coming up on the broadcast, an exclusive interview.
and the impact of Christian leaders. Watch Christian World News.
Welcome back. Well, fishing has been part of the Sea of Galilee for thousands of years. But as CBN News Mideast correspondent Julie Stahl reports, all that may soon come to an end.
One of the Bible's best-known bodies of water
is the Sea of Galilee. In Israel, it's called Lake Kinneret, the lowest freshwater lake on Earth. Fed by the Jordan River and underground springs, it's the source of much of the country's drinking water.
This is the lake where Peter, James, and John cast their nets, and Jesus walked on the water. It's also Israel's largest body of fresh water.
Now, several years of drought have brought the water level dangerously low. And Israel's agriculture ministry says it wants to ban all fishing from boats on the sea for 2 years because the number of fish caught dropped to less than 10% of what it was 10 years ago. These figures raised a real concern about the possibility of an ecological disaster, turning the Kinneret into a lake without fish. But longtime fishermen like Menachem Lev and Yairi Froelich say the authorities are not in touch with the realities of the lake.
That it's still water in the lake, it's still fish in the lake. People that sit and decide in the houses of the government, they don't know what's going on in the lake.
However, Water Authority spokesman Uri Shor says the kinds of fish are important to maintain water quality.
In Lake Kinneret, what's important is the variety of the kinds of fish. We are looking at the variety, and it's very important for the quality of water and for all the fish as well.
Modern fishermen use sonar to find large schools of fish, such as sardines and tilapia, better known here as St. Peter's fish, that have been in this water since the time of Jesus. Huge nets are cast, then pulled up on winches, and the catch is thrown into the boat by hand.
We make money, we have fish, and everybody can come and see how much fish we have in this lake.
But water expert Professor Avner Adin says the number of sardines has dropped very low, and St. Peter's fish is 50 times less than it was a few years ago.
Much of this is because illegal fishing, using poisons and other things.
The government plans to compensate the legal fishermen for the upcoming 2 years of losses. But still, the fishermen say it's a mistake to stop fishing because the lake is full of surprises.
It was in the past, I remember, it was the same. 1 year is no fish, we said, going to fish. Next year you come, the lake is full fish, you never know.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Sea of Galilee.
The lake is full of surprises. Well, the world's Orthodox Christians celebrate the birth of Christ on January 7th. Russian ministries shared the spirit of Christmas by handing out 50,000 presents to street kids and orphans. They gave out boxes full of toys, school supplies, and a children's Bible. It's all part of an outreach called Project Hope.
Because children, that's a future of the country. And the needy children, that's our call from God to help them. That's how we share love of Christ to an entire world as a church, that we take care of the kids and needy kids. And they are the future. They need to know the hope. They need to know the Christ.
Russian ministries partnered with more than 200 churches to deliver those gifts. And that's all for this edition of Christian World News. Until next week, from all of us here, goodbye and God bless you.